Today the focus is on introducing you into the concept and also terms of related to sustainable development and also sustainable development goals.
When you are named a faith keeper of the Onondaga Council of Chiefs, and for me it was 51 years ago, you are told that we are now placing in your hands all life, and it is your responsibility to look after all life. Every person, every tree, every animal, every stream, and the earth itself, unto the seventh generation. In 1972, the world started a process that is mapping our future. The United Nations Conference on the Human Environment held in Stockholm brought the industrialized and developing nations together to delineate the rights of people to a healthy and productive environment.
The environmental crisis will profoundly alter our planet.
Fossil fuels is slowly warming the globe.
Our report is founded upon the concept of sustainable development.
We all have two hands and the sentiment of the world.
Now I wonder if they will even exist.
We are plundering our children's heritage for our present unsustainable practices.
Notre maison brûle.
The key is to come out from Johannesburg with a credible commitment to action.
Now is your moment
to save ourselves and the planet for our children.
We can fix this. We can stop this madness.
Accelerated climate change is here right now.
I will link arms with those marching for climate action.
We, baby, are going to fight. Mommy, Daddy, your president too. We will all fight.
We are experiencing a process that is linking our nations and communities much more closely together than they have ever been before. Our lives are intertwined via the food we eat, the music we listen to, the information we get, and the ideas we hold. Last year, the world's leaders unanimously committed to eliminate extreme poverty, address climate change, and build more resilient societies. In the Agenda 2030, we have a blueprint for sustainable development. Now the real work and the real opportunities begin. The potential offered by these new sustainable development goals and the binding treaty on climate change is immense.
It is a new chapter of hope for the world.
It is we, the peoples, who are embarking today on a journey towards a more sustainable and equitable future. Our journey will involve governments, the United Nations system and other international institutions, local authorities, indigenous peoples, civil society, business and the private sector, the scientific and the academic community, and all people.
Because we deserve to do more than just survive. We deserve to thrive.
This interconnectedness among humans on the planet is creating a global village where the barriers of national and international boundaries become less relevant and the world a smaller place. The road ahead may be fraught with difficulties, challenges, and struggles, but we must dare each other to be visionary, to be ambitious, to be leaders. Given the opportunity, we can raise ourselves. We must join hands with the rest of creation and speak of common sense, responsibility, solidarity, and peace. We have all the tools. We are standing in front of an opportunity to change the course of life on the planet. Let's work together to make this world better, where everybody can live with dignity and abundance. Our future starts now. To leave no one behind, we must all lead.
What I said before also, that this term sustainability, and I think all of you maybe already heard about it, is used very inflationary. Yeah? That, for example, in every you hear it a lot in different debates. Yeah? For example, also in industry, you hear about there's a sustainable production, or the consumer, they are urged to eat and drink more sustainably, or even, I don't know, like a warm water bath for senior citizens is sustainable for their health. Yeah? So it seems that everyone understands sustainability, this term sustainability, but uses it differently, and maybe also the understanding is different. That's why we go back now in time and start from the origin. And for this we have to go back actually 300 years ago roughly, in 1730. We have to go back to Saxonia. And the guy you see here is Mr. Karl von Karlowitz. And he actually came up with this term because he was the chief of a mining company. And this mining company, they had a problem because they needed wood or timber for smelting this ore to produce metal. And they did it very intensively, so actually forests some had disappeared, but also not depleted. So he actually came up as first with this 3 pillars, saying we need an environmental equilibrium, we need economic security, and we need social justice. Because when he saw actually that forests are disappearing and depleting, he said that we have to conserve our forests, and he said we have to conserve in a way that we can harvest, but we still have to sow and plant, and we should only harvest as much as could also regrow. So he actually came up with this first thinking about harvesting in a sustainable way, so not overusing our resources. And this actually is still also the foundation for the forestry management in Germany. And yes, the next one. Yeah. And as I said, this the term sustainability is used very inflationary, and also to make it more confusing, also this concept sustainable development. There's actually there's no agreed, so to say, definition. There are only, I would say, most common or quoted definitions, like this one here from this. It's called the Brundtland Report. We saw it also shortly in the movie. Brundtland, so her name, it's a woman, it's Gro Harlem Brundtland, and she was the former Prime Minister of Norway and also the chief of this World Commission on Environment and Development. And as also mentioned in the short trailer, they came up with a report in 1987. With the Brundtland Report, and there they stated, or they elaborated this definition, and more or less until today it's the most common used definition about sustainable development. And it stated that sustainable development, similar also just what you said, is that development, or sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And in this definition you can see more or less two key concepts. So on the one hand you have this concept of needs, because 2 times it's mentioned, so we have to meet the needs of the present, but also have to make sure that we meet also the needs of the future generations. And here the needs are particular, or it's particular for the poorest, that also the poorest can meet their needs. And we have the second concept is this concept of limitations, so that that the environment, or the ability of the environment is limited to provide resources to us, and that we should use it in a way that we can constantly use the environment also over time. If there are questions in between, you're always allowed, of course, to ask. And as I said before, this Karl von Karlowitz, he not only was the founder, so to say, of this term sustainability, but he also already provided these three pillars. Yeah? What I said before: environmental equilibrium, economic security, and social justice. And since 1713, there was actually a lot of discussion about this term, but actually this thinking, yeah, in these three pillars, in these three categories, it always actually maintained in this way. Also, as I said, or you saw in the movie that 1972, also this huge conference in Stockholm, they also kept these three pillars, and also in this Brundtland report, they stick to these three pillars, and until today, actually, they have these three dimensions of the sustainable development. But I also would like to highlight here, I don't want to go into more detail now, but there are also a lot of discussions around if there not should be also a fourth dimension added, because people argue that the society or the complexity of society cannot really be represented only in these three dimensions. So there are discussions around that maybe also culture or institution or governance should be added as a fourth dimension. But also now for the for reducing the complexity at the moment, I will stick to this three dimensions of sustainable development. And you see here these three pillars: so environment, economy, and society. And it says actually only if you have this environmental sustainability plus economic sustainability and social sustainability, then you can achieve a system which is more or less sustainable. Which is, when you combine these two, which is equitable, which is viable and bearable, all these three would make up the system of you can achieve this true sustainability. Yes, and shortly we will do a game.
And in each of these basically categories, we have subcategories or terms. For example, conservation, housing, medical care, and so on in society, and the rest in the subsequent categories. So basically the rule of the game is that you throw a dice, and one of the dices means society, the other of the dices will constitute environment, and the third economy. So whichever the number on the dice, please, for example, the first one would be 3, right, the first dice. So you say society is number 3, so you take the third concept. If the second dice shows 4, you choose the fourth out of the environment. So you collect the concepts all together, and then you would have to come up with an example where all 3 categories with their dimensions are present. We have an example that I'm going to read to you very quickly, but feel free to make it shorter or longer. It depends on how you want to explain it, whether you will take more time to explain it or it's just one sentence explanation. So the linkage is, the example of a linkage is a young farmer inherits a garden plot. Oh, sorry guys. So the role. So the first dice was 4 for society, so we chose poverty. And the second dice was 3 for environment, so it's land use and soil. And the dice number 3 was 6, which constitutes economy, and that was markets. So an example of the linkage would be a young farmer inherits a garden plot. The previous owner had not cared for the plot. The soil had lost fertility and was eroded by rainwater. The young farmer kept most of the harvest from the garden plot to feed his family. The produce market in town suffered because many farmers did not have surpluses to sell because their land was also eroded. So you can see that all three things are interconnected in just one linkage example. You do not have to start with the society, then go to environment or economy. Logically, you can start from economy, it can influence society, and then society influence environment, or whichever way you feel comfortable. Help you to finish and complete it. So, since you guys were first, so could you please start?
Okay, so we had, for society, we had housing, environment, we had air, and economy was local economy. So in our scenario, the local economy for this town is mostly made up of factories. And so that decreases air quality and increases air pollution. And then because of that, the housing market goes down and fewer people want to live there, and so that hurts the local economy.
Okay, perfect, nice. Any comments to that example? No? Okay, then probably...
For society, we get housing, environment, habitat, and economy. So one village connected and decided to build their houses using woods. There was they cut all 4 trees and they made a dam. This action leads to destruction of animals' habitat, and many animals left the forest or died because of the lack of water, food, and shelter. This increased the attack of wild animals on cattle and people.
Okay, interesting.
In the economy, we have local economy. So we say that poverty, like poor families don't have good income and they don't have like good place to live. Maybe they will live in very like bad places and they will consume maybe wood or some other stuff, and that causes damage for the environment as well. So their habitat is not good. And also, if their habitat is not good, like they don't have good well-being, they don't have they are not healthy to work, and that also affects the local economy. The local economy is not growing due to the well-being of the people.
Okay.
Due to drinking water shortage, the businessmen can sell the drinking water in the markets very high prices, and the market suffers from the poverty because common people have to spend much their income for only the basic needs. That's why they cannot avoid from the poverty.
Okay. Nice, thanks. And the last pair?
In society, we have politics, environment, pollution, and economy, we have markets.
Okay.
So, in the government of, for example, in one country, forest land, the government do not pay attention to the amount of the cars in the country, and there was the level of emissions was increased long time, and different factories also are working ongoingly, without any rest, and there are different repairs, and after several times there appears different kind of problems, falling trees, harvests are not as it should be, and then market is suffering because of bad quality of products.
Okay, I see. So your message is when the government doesn't take care of, doesn't regulate the market, it can increase the pollution and other negative effects, right? Yes. Okay.
Of course, thanks. I think you are all very creative to come up within a couple of minutes to see these links. Maybe it was, of course, there was a negative example. That's why you thought more about linking them and see the negative linkages. But maybe we just do like 1 or 2 pairs or groups that we maybe try to achieve also to see a link, focusing more on already achieving sustainability. So if anyone immediately wants to throw out something or positive link, or how to create maybe this positive link and achieve sustainability.
I think this is probably because of these examples, if we made it positive, it then correspond to reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Anyone would volunteer probably to choose the same concepts you had and come up with a positive linkage for the same
positive linkage I have for theirs.
Okay.
Like conservation, air, and jobs. I can say if in order to conserve air, we need environmentalists, we need scientists, engineers, and that produces jobs for people.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
We also could make it positive. So when politics, when government controls pollution and markets, so there is less pollution and the nothing affects to fruits, like people grow like fruits and vegetables at home, and that's why there's good market probably, and pollution is less.
Okay.
And the government controls.
So basically, the message would be in a way similar to that you had before, but structured in a positive way that the government takes care and action. It influences the environment, and in turn, the environment influences the market. Okay, nice, thanks. And anyone else? No? Okay, you first, then you guys.
For our own poverty, habitat, and local economy, I guess if we increase the quality of the place that people live, it can increase the well-being of people, and also it will increase the local economy. But because if well-being is good, the quality of work will be better and more productive. The economy will be, and that will lead more income and reduction of poverty.
So that's in turn a cycle. Nice, thanks.
So in our town we build wind turbines, and that boosts the local economy by creating jobs for the people who live there. And in turn that can increase quality of housing by having more money to spend, which then also continues to boost the local economy.
Okay. So basically, in a way, what it shows us is that to any negative thing, there would be a positive solution, right? So anything that is happening in the wrong way, we could turn to something positive.
Yeah, but I think basically more or less the same, but I think it really shows it also your comment that maybe the first round was more like situation analysis. It's always you base something you know or you heard about, that sometimes government is not doing anything about fighting pollution, so maybe first the situation analysis you did, and now with this coming up with positive examples already to trigger thinking what can actually be done. This is also very much referred to this concept of the sustainable development and these new sustainable development goals, because this is more or less a frame and central now to many governments and institutions, private sector, because this they have now as a frame, they have these goals they should achieve, and based on this they have to come up with new ideas and new thinking. So I think, of course, this was just a game, and to all these different links, there are millions, I would say, possible linkages and solutions. So of course we do not have a winner or loser now. It just was to trigger your thinking. And we will continue now with the presentation. Once more as a repetition, because this was also already mentioned in the movie a little bit. These milestones, how it actually came from raising more or less awareness about environmental crisis and this warming due to fossil fuels until this Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and the related Sustainable Development Goals. And as you saw in the movie, so 1972 there was this conference in Stockholm where people gathered, and it was more of raising awareness, but also in the same year there was that the Club of Rome, this global think tank, that they published also a report called The Limits of Growth. So it was more or less the first time that also globally people raised awareness about the limits of our natural resources, or the provisioning of natural resources. And they said at that time, if we continue to grow in this way, from the population, also from the economy, then beyond, I think they said 2100, the environment cannot provide any resources anymore to us. And then also in this, so 1987, I already talked about, there was this Bundland report from this former, because she was the chief of this Commission on Environment, the former Prime Minister of Norway, that they published this report stating sustainable development and this 3 pillars, what I showed you before. And this also then framed more or less the discussion for the conference in Rio in 1992, the UN Conference on Environment and Development. And they kept these 3 pillars, and also out of this Rio conference emerged these different Rio conventions, as we know them today. So the UNFCCC, so the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the CBDs, the Convention on Biological Diversity, but also they formed the UN Commission on Sustainable Development, and other declarations in the Agenda 21 came also out of this conference. And also later this UNCCT, so focusing more on this combating desertification. Then it further developed, and the discussion went on, and then based on this discussion about sustainable development, actually in 2000, in New York, there was again a gathering of a lot of high-level people from different governments, and there they actually adopted these Millennium Development Goals. I think in total there were 8. There were goals, so really for the first time I would say that they were time-bound, because it was adopted that they said until 2015 we would actually like to achieve this goal, so they were time-bound and also measurable, and also I think around 174 countries or something agreed on that they would like to work to achieve also these goals. And so here it was more or less the deadline was 2015. Then 2012 there was the Rio Plus 20 conference, and there they already started to because it was only 3 years ahead, and they realized maybe we need more time, and also they realized that the goals they adopted, they also have to be a little bit adapted, because they didn't grasp this whole complexity also behind achieving these goals. And so they started to think about further developing goals, and then in 2015, before actually this very well-known Paris conference about climate change, they adopted the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, and also identified these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And this was more or less the milestones, how we actually came to the Sustainable Development Goals. And in this slide you see all these 17, and I think it doesn't really make sense now. I mean, I have the full list here, but actually I would like to, because of course there are, I mean, I can highlight some. So the first is really focusing on poverty. So it says to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Also the second is end hunger, to achieve food security and improve nutrition. And goes on and on. So for example, also related to climate change. So it's number 13, taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And but we thought now it doesn't really make sense now to talk in general about the Sustainable Development Goals, but more putting it also into context. Which of these are actually most important also for the Central Asian context, and why actually, and maybe also shortly why it actually came that these Millennium Development Goals were abandoned a little bit, and then these new goals came up. So why didn't they just prolong the time period, so to say? Because at first they said until 2015 we'd like to achieve them, and so why didn't they just prolong the deadline, so to say, of achieving this goal?
To frame the national agenda and political policies, the difference between the MDGs and SDGs is not, MDGs were focusing only on poor countries. They were, the goals were quite narrow. There were only 8 goals, 16 targets, and 60 indicators. But for SDG, it's about 17 goals, 169 targets, and 230 indicators. So why, I mean, these figures are coming? Because upon the achievement of MDGs, many countries, they found out that yes, the poverty was decreased, but food security, malnutrition still persists. Sustainable development of agriculture is still under the question. For instance, education, yes, maybe some of the targets on education has been achieved, but the quality of an education, the social exclusion, inequality in the society, all these problems have become so clear and obvious. For example, even in gender, for instance, in Kyrgyzstan, yes, women participation in political processes have been increased, but gender inequality still persists in the society. All these problems actually, not only in Central Asia, but all over the world, in poorest countries, they need to define further these sustainable development goals with so many indicators. That's why it's more complex and more problematic now for the countries, how they will adopt their national agenda, how they will use these SDGs to frame their political processes, policies and strategies. Unfortunately, another problem is, for instance, for MDGs, it was only global reporting, like countries were reporting what they're achieving, how they're achieving, mostly poor countries. The target was on poor countries, but now SDGs are middle-income countries, lower middle-income countries also trying to pursue SDGs. And the comparability should be not only on global level, but also international, nations, regional ones, at regional level. It requires disaggregated data by sex, by migratory status, by ethnicity, by age, income, by geographical location, which also complicates the countries to report. That's why the countries need to prioritize which SDGs they would like to pursue, and of course it depends on economic situation in the country, social situation. It's also a problem that there are different these goals and indicators and targets. They require data, they require methodology to collect the data. And at the international level, already CIS countries and also in Central Asia, they have analyzed that a number of methodologies and data exist, but also a number are still unavailable. The data is not collected, or there is no methodology to collect. So how they're going to achieve all this, how they're going to develop these methodologies, and how they're going to collect the data, I mean, this top the agenda as of today. And the role of development organizations and donor countries is to support and to align their policy strategies with these sustainable development strategies. Because if for MDGs there was no monitoring system established, but for SDGs now each country needs to report on an annual basis. And for that, UN has organized at high level international expert group, where the group is developing indicators, how the countries need to report. They're giving the frame how the countries can report on the achievement of SDG. So let's see how the process will happen in the future. For instance, in Central Asia, last year we had a big international conference with participation of a number of international organizations and different countries where all these problems were discussed. How to coordinate cooperation, because the data need to be official, and each organization, they can develop their own data, but how the country can use this data, this is resource intensive, human resources, financial resources. So these all efforts need to be requires joint efforts, cooperation, partnership, and of course partnership. Maybe next slide. Yes. Here you see the comparison of different of MDGs and SDGs. As already mentioned, first MDGs were too narrow, but now the primary spheres people are looking for are justice, prosperity, living in planetary boundaries, so protecting our ecosystems, people's health, knowledge, education, poverty reduction, fighting inequality. Next slide. So, as mentioned before, the concept of sustainable is very fuzzy, and the questions of sustainable social justice, environmental justice, economic innovations, technologies, modernization, all these require some trade-offs. And in Kyrgyzstan, in Central Asia, the current challenge like poverty, labor migration, as you know, for instance, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, they are highly dependent on remittances, and when the financial crisis comes at international level, or the economy in Russia slowdowns, where our migrants are working, actually it affects our Central Asian countries' development as well. So water management, access to water, equal access to water, gender equality, environmental, climate change adaptation, all these are problems that are very high in Central Asia, and based on this, the governments need to frame and decide how they're going to achieve these SDGs. And for that, for instance, at the UN level, there is a special program for the economies of Central Asia, SPAC program. So there was this program has the UN program has organized a meeting in Ganja. It's a small town in Azerbaijan where the declaration was adopted by Central Asian and Caucasus countries where they would like to cooperate. It is one of the regional or inter-regional cooperation platforms where they agree to cooperate to achieve SDGs together. So they can discuss the policy coherence, data sharing, how they can improve the work of statistical offices, and many other issues. Of course, there are other regional platforms. Maybe you have heard about ICSD. It's a Central Asian Intergovernmental Commission of Sustainable Development. It's a bit amorphy, maybe platform. It's not working at this stage. I mean, very slowly. Countries cooperating, but I mean, these are two regional platforms where the countries of Central Asia are trying to cooperate in the field of sustainable development. Maybe next slide. Yeah, in terms of Kyrgyzstan, since we're in Kyrgyzstan, I have put that we have government decree adopted in 2015 with establishment of the coordination committee, which is chaired by Vice Prime Minister. And there are members from civil society, international organizations where they discuss which SDGs will be priority for Kyrgyzstan. How to establish monitoring system. Based on that, they're going, because they have to report to at international level, they have to meet the obligation commitments under international conventions like already mentioned called UNFCCC, UN Convention on Climate Change, on, for instance, on Convention on Biodiversity or combating desertification. So all these issues requires cooperation because SDGs are interdisciplinary topic and requires coordination not only between in-line ministries but also between donors and developed countries. So, so far UN agencies are proactively supporting SDGs in Kyrgyzstan, and GRZ we are going to provide support as a small project to develop a monitoring system and improve data collection and digitalization in Kyrgyzstan. So, yeah, the conference was mentioned. Yeah, I think in general this is in short what is happening in Central.
Also, the concept behind sustainability is a complex matter, but I think. Of course, from a maybe theoretical point of view, we can discuss on and on and on. Is it 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions? Is there something else missing? What kind of pillars we need in general? But I think that from a practical point of view, I think we should just start. Also, as we have now these sustainable development goals, and there's a frame and also a program which countries can use and base on. So I think we have really, and also for me, it's important that we get away of this sector thinking. Yeah, what I said before, that the industry uses sustainability in a way that we need sustainable production, or maybe also the, so to say, green sectors. For example, also in Kyrgyzstan, focusing on forestry, that they focus on sustainable forest management. But it's not enough actually that only individual sectors only take up the sustainability concept, but it's really that we need this, as also Maya mentions, intersectoral and even intergovernmental, international cooperation. So it's better also on a national level, I would say, that we need this like an overall enabling framework where each sector can focus on the sustainability concept. And then the second key message, as I said, so this whole concept of sustainable development is now really central and gives guidance to governments, businesses, also educational institutes and non-government organizations. So there is a program which can be made use of to achieve a better world. And then the SDGs, they are a set of new universal goals, and as Maya mentioned, there are many more targets and indicators behind. So we really have something now time-bound and measurable, and over the next years. And this really could support the countries also to frame their agendas and policies around it.